Good morning, everybody. My name is Victoria Bradford-Keegan. I'm the Programme Director for Nature Towns and Cities. I'm really delighted to welcome you to our conference today. I'm so pleased you've chosen to spend your day with us, building a collaborative, supportive network of people championing urban nature recovery that benefits both people and place. We're aware that for many of you, this might be a new online platform. Don't worry, in just a few short moments, we'll give you some tips and pointers on how to make the most of the day and also how to make the most of the tech. But before that, I'm just going to say a little word on Nature Towns and Cities. Nature Towns and Cities is a coalition of public, private, and third sector organisations committed to helping millions more people enjoy time in nature, close to home, in greener, healthier, thriving towns and cities. We're working hard to inspire, support, and incentivise place based change, enabling local authorities, their place based partners, communities to take ambitious action for nature in urban areas. At the heart of Nature Towns and Cities is catalysing large-scale change in the places and the communities where there is the least access to green space. And we believe that listening to and empowering communities to take action is essential. By greening towns and cities and delivering landscape-scale change, we'll also help address the challenges facing towns and cities in the 21st century, from health inequalities to climate resilience and inclusive growth. But we know that funding and investment are essential to delivering those improvements, the improvements that councils and communities of their partners have designed together. So we'll work hard to support you to attract investment and to create and restore urban nature. Collaboration is also integral to Nature Towns and Cities, and we're building a UK-wide movement for change. You are absolutely invited to be part of that coalition, and today is a really important first step on the way of that. We welcome everyone and anyone who wants to lead for that change in their place and also across the UK. This conference is that first step, and we've got lots more on offer. So please do have a look at the Nature Towns and Cities website if you've not done so before or not done for a little while, to find out more about how to join in, how to get involved, and also sign up to our newsletter for more on how Nature Towns and Cities can help you help your place and your organisation. So hopefully that's not news for many of you, but I'm aware that we may have some new people who have not had much of an experience of Nature Towns and Cities so far. So today you'll hear from a really wide range of people and organisations from across the UK on how and why they're leading for urban landscape scale change. The conference will comprise a mixture of keynote sessions, panel sessions, practical workshops, and there's lots of networking opportunities. We've very deliberately made a choice about the tech platform today that will enable you to have those networking opportunities to speak to people that you don't know, people that you've not seen for a while. We'll be discussing the big ideas and the change that we need to make locally and nationally, and what it means to lead well as coming back to that, the importance of collaboration. We'll hopefully leave you with practical actions. They'll come from yourselves, from other people who are joining today as delegates, as well from speakers and workshop leaders. Well, that will also give you some of the connections and resources that you can take away today. For those people that have been in for a little while, there was a QR code up on the screen before me, and we were asking you to share what you are hoping to learn about today, to take away from today. Thank you for those people that have been filling in the responses. We've had lots already. People are asking about how they can learn more about working together, about how to make that cultural shift to more people caring for urban green space and urban nature, how local authorities can better engage communities, how to collaborate across a town or a city or an urban area. Though people are looking for the policy updates and best practice. I'm really pleased that we will be hopefully giving you all of those things today at various points throughout the day. So please do stay with us, join in, and make the most of the opportunities today. We have with us today, to keep everything running super smoothly, an MC, Suzy Glass, who's going to be our host and our MC, and she'll lead you through the day, as well as starting with those tech checks that I mentioned just now. Suzy is co-CEO of an organisation called BRAE and specialises in convening and coalition building for nature and climate transformation. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Suzy, but I just also wanted to say have a wonderful day today. Really enjoy taking part and meeting new people and hearing different perspectives. Over to you, Suzy.
Brilliant. Thank you, Victoria. What a lovely intro. As Victoria says, I run a company called BRAE. We do strategy and innovation for nature and climate. I spend a lot of time building multi-stakeholder partnerships, so anticipate that throughout the day I will be nodding vigorously as we hear from an incredibly rich programme of speakers. It's amazing watching you all in the chat. I love how British this is, all of the weather updates, various words for drizzle and rain from across the UK, and what a diverse group it is. It's lovely to see so many people from Aberdeenshire right down through into Devon. Okay, my job today is to help join dots and help you all move through a day that starts very much in the inspire and build momentum space, and then moves gradually into more interactive participatory setting in the afternoon. It's really important that you all come with us on that and contribute. You are as important as anyone else that's in the room talking to you from the stage. You can see on the screen, these are some principles that the Nature Town and Cities team have put together to help us to land ourselves and work together through the day. I just want to focus on that curiosity piece. Curiosity is so important for this work. Those of us who have been working for a while on net zero and nature positive strategies know that it's a complex, difficult transition that we're trying to get through. We don't know everything. We have to learn. We have to be agile. And underpinning both of those things is curiosity. So if you remember anything from this list of brilliant principles, take with you curiosity throughout the day. I also want to give everyone a bit of a tip for those moments when we are networking. I'll talk a little bit more about the different settings we can be in this platform in a moment. Try yes and wherever possible. Yes and helps us build together, even when we're vehemently disagreeing. If we yes and work on to the next point, then we'll find that we collectively create agency, forward direction, a sense of spirit and togetherness that is so vital to being able to make the kind of progress that we need to make and can make when we work together. Right, talking of working together, there'll be various polls and slides throughout the day that will appear in the chat. Andy, I've got your note in the chat. I will read them in a minute for you. Apologies for that. Watch out for the slides and polls. Please do join in with those. And a quick note to everyone else that we will also be recording. So if you want to step away, need to step away at any point, don't worry, you can check back on things. And indeed, if you just want to revise what you heard throughout the day, those recordings will be made available to you to watch back. Right, house rules. How to get the best out of the day. I'll just read through what's on that slide. Please bring curiosity and creativity, actively listen to others and respond respectfully. Kindness, please. Share your knowledge when you feel comfortable to do so. Connect with each other. Collaboration drives greener cities. Review the agenda and join the sessions that interest you most. Take breaks. Step away from your screen when needed. Jot down any actions you're inspired to take after the sessions, and I will come back to that last one towards the end of the day and ask you to reflect on what your key takeaway is, what the one thing you're going to do when you leave the room is. So do hold on to that, jotting down actions piece. Right, let's move on to the agenda. This morning is look at that, seamless. This morning is a morning of keynotes and panels, so you can sit back and listen. There is a break halfway through, which we'll help you with, and there's an opportunity for connecting, more networking in that period, which I will help you to understand how to engage with. After lunch, we move into the more interactive space. There are two parts to that, and you'll have choices of 3 different things. Again, we will revisit that, and I'll support you with that as we go. Then at the end of the day, we have some closing keynotes. Stick around for those, they will be brilliant. Okay, Tech, bit of housekeeping. As Victoria said, we're aware this is probably a new platform for most of you. The best thing to do is to treat it as though it is a conference space. It's a big open space. You can move around. Their floors will open up. There'll be rooms that you can go into. But broadly, the most important thing to know is that most of the time, it's certainly through the morning, you will be in stage mode. This is stage mode. You are listening. Your mics and cameras cannot be turned on, and you cannot break the platform. So don't worry about pushing buttons. We'll also be in networking mode, which is when you're in, you can see those little tables that you came into at the beginning. If you double click on seats, you will be able to move around the tables. And in those tables, you'll be able to speak to each other. Again, you cannot break the platform. So do push buttons. The worst that will happen is you'll get lost, in which case go into chat and someone will help you find the right place to be, or you'll get yourself kicked out the platform, in which case you just come back in. So please don't worry about getting things wrong. You can't. Use chat. It's for everyone. You will be talking to everyone when you post. You can also direct message people. There's an option for you to be able to do that if you want to send a message to someone in particular. The program team have Nature Town and Cities written after their name if you want to talk to anyone in the program team. There is a tab for Q&A in the chat. You can use that to write questions, and you can also upvote the questions as and when you need to say that you would like to hear more, you'd like to hear a panel respond to that. I think that's everything I need to tell you at this point. Do keep checking chat. There is more information coming through in chat. I am going to, in a moment, hand over to Oliver. Oliver Harman is Chief Strategy Officer for Natural England and will be taking us through the first part of the day when we hear from our three amazing keynotes, which I'm very much looking forward to. Oliver, over to you.
Suzy, thank you. I love that, and I particularly like Be Curious. There's a lot of curiosity in the comments already, which is fantastic. So good morning, everybody. As Suzy just said, I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Natural England, and it is my privilege and my honour to introduce three fantastic speakers for you this morning. Before I get onto that, I just want to talk personally a little bit about what Nature Towns and Cities means for me, and how, I guess, putting people at the very heart of nature recovery and recognising all the benefits that all communities can get from nature has been within me and at the heart of my career choices for many years. And I say this because we all have our own stories. And I think sometimes, you know, through story, we get connection, and from connection, we get community, and amazing things can happen. And I hope that is very much what today is all about. So my little story is, I grew up in a small village called Great Ayton. Great Ayton is about 10 miles south of Middlesbrough, so next to a huge urban area, Teesside. And I grew up in a large village, and next to our house was a footpath, and that footpath led to a field, and around 100 metres across that field was a railway track. That railway track was actually the boundary where you crossed into North York Moors National Park. And just beyond it was the most wonderful place called Rosebery Topping. And anyone who knows the North York Moors, it's quite an iconic, I think it's called Yorkshire's Matterhorn. You know, ancient woodlands, fantastic landscapes. And for my childhood, every Sunday after Sunday lunch, that's where we went. We went across the footpath, across the field, across the railway line, into the national park, and we went up Rosebery Topping. And when I look back on my childhood with a sense of joy, I remember landscapes, I remember nature, I remember adventure, because that's what it brought to me. You know, what impact did that have? Well, it was no surprise that I joined the Environment Agency after the end of my education, spent some time there doing lots of wonderful roles, and then joined Natural England, where our very mission is building partnerships for nature's recovery. So in other words, it engendered something really special in me. And the wonderful thing about Nature Towns and Cities is that that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a movement and we build momentum, because the fierce truth is that not enough of our communities, not enough of the public have the access to nature and have the privilege of what I've benefited from throughout my life. And that is what, you know, we need to give back. And it's only through partnership, it's only through collaboration that we are going to achieve that. So without further ado, I will move on to our three guest speakers, and they cover, if you like, the three big kind of pillars that I think all need to work together to achieve bringing nature to people into the heart of our towns and cities. And that is national policy, it is local leadership, and it is all in the essence of collaboration and networks. So first of all, can I introduce our Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at DEFRA, Baroness Sue Hayman, who amongst a broad portfolio is our Ministerial Lead for Access. Delighted to have you with us, Baroness Hayman. I'll pass over to you.
Thank you very much, Oliver, and good morning, everybody. And I'm really honoured to be here today at the inaugural Nature Towns and Cities conference, because the Nature Towns and Cities Partnership is leading both exciting and vital work to place access to green spaces at the heart of our future plans for our towns and our cities. And this ambition is a really important one, and one that I share, because we know that spending time in nature is good for us. It's good for nature, it's good for our communities, it can improve both mental and physical health, increase school attendance and attainment levels, but also foster a love and appreciation for nature and the environment. And greening our neighbourhoods helps to manage the impacts of climate change while making them attractive places where we all want to live. And for all of these reasons, improving access to nature is of vital importance. And not just to my own department here in DEFRA, but right across government. Urban greening presents an important opportunity to drive the delivery of all 5 of the government's missions, and in particular, its mission of kickstarting economic growth. Nature is essential to this mission. By building it into our towns and cities, we create thriving places where people want to work, where they want to visit. It supports green jobs, and it boosts our valuable construction industry. However, we do know that access to nature is currently unequal, both in terms of the distribution of green and blue spaces across the country, but also in terms of who accesses and engages with these spaces. The ability to access green space close to home is essential to ensuring that as many people as possible share in the benefits of nature, regardless of their background or where they live. And this is why we have committed to ensuring that everybody can access nature within a 15-minute walk of their home. And Nature Towns and Cities will help us to deliver this by targeting the urban areas where greening will make a real difference to the greatest number of people. I know that meeting our ambitions to ensure nature and communities can thrive in growing areas will be a collective effort, and Suzy rightly mentioned the importance of collaboration earlier on, because it will require both strong, inclusive leadership and an ambitious commitment to work together. A particular strength of Nature's Towns and Cities has been its ability to bring together a diverse range of organisations and interests around a shared purpose. I hope to see this continue with more organisations from even more sectors brought on board as this work progresses. I was very lucky recently to see these principles in action when I had a visit to Islington, which is the UK's most densely populated borough, but also a beneficiary of the Future Parks Accelerator programme, on whose successes Nature Towns and Cities builds. I met there with leaders from the local authority and local community organisations at the beautiful Caledonian Park, a hub for activities such as community growing, a forest school and community payback. I heard there how organisations are working together to deliver a range of projects to boost local access to nature, while supporting wider aims for health, for housing, the economy and the environment. And I'm really excited to see how the Nature Towns and Cities model of cross-sector partnerships and place-based leadership continues to develop and grow. In DEFRA, we're also driving forward work to improve access to nature. and to embed access and nature recovery into our planning reforms. Recognising the importance of access to nature close to home, we are now developing 2 new official statistics, one each for access to green and to blue space in England. And these key data sets will help to unlock the actual delivery of our ambitious commitment for everyone to live within the 15-minute walk of a green or blue space. And our manifesto commitments to create 9 new national river walks and 3 new national forests in England will see us go even further to expand access to the great outdoors. This will include access close to where people live and where provision is currently poor. The Nature Restoration Fund will also help housing and infrastructure development to do more for our environmental recovery, allowing us to pool our resources to deliver conservation measures at scale and achieve the greatest benefit for the environment. This approach will unlock the positive impact that development can have, if done in the right way, to drive the recovery of protected sites and species, whilst at the same time accelerating the building of homes and infrastructure. And in parallel, the National Planning Policy Framework has been updated with new golden rules that will ensure that development in the Greenbelt brings benefits, not only for communities, but also for nature. All of this work recognises that a healthy natural environment is essential, both in its own right, but also for sustained and resilient growth. So can I end by thanking you for inviting me here to open the Creating Nature Towns and Cities Conference and to celebrate the fantastic work of the partnership to date. Greening our towns and our cities is an issue I personally feel passionately about, and I know that this special event will be both informative and inspirational for all attendees. The work that Nature Towns and Cities does to make sure that everyone can experience the great pleasures of nature-rich, characterful neighbourhoods is so important, and I am delighted to be here to support this work today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a great start. Already beginning to hear about intertwining challenges and, of course, the co-benefits then of taking action, which I'm sure will come up multiple times as we move through the day. Next, we're moving on to Councillor Sam Lux of Nottingham City Council, I hope. Yes, we are. I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. So yeah, I'm Councillor Lux from Nottingham City, and I've been responsible for green space and climate policy here for about a year now. And today I want to tell you Nottingham's extraordinary story of urban nature expansion, which has flourished because I think we have 3 things in place. So one is sheer political will, 2, dedicated and creative teams both within and beyond the local authority, and most importantly, without a doubt, our citizens. And like most of you here, I expect, I'm totally sold on expanding high quality green space in urban areas. I think all too often green space is framed as a luxury or a nice to have, but I'm making the case to you today that places like ours facing severe social and economic challenges not only have the most to gain from investing in nature, but are actually in the strongest positions to do so. So a bit about Nottingham, starting with its challenges. Like many cities in England, we've struggled with deindustrialisation decline, and we currently rank as the 11th most deprived district in England, with significantly higher than average income deprivation, lower than average life expectancy, and high levels of child poverty. And on top of that sort of difficult foundation, we have been one of the hardest hit by austerity since the Conservatives took power in 2010 and changed the funding formula to sort of disproportionately hit urban areas as opposed to rural areas. And then on top of that, we have a very tight city boundary. So we have a relatively small council tax base. We have lots of places around the edge of the city, which if you ask them, they'd say they live in Nottingham, they use all our services, but they're not paying towards our budget. So that's difficult too, and all of these circumstances most recently culminated in a Section 114 notice being served, which the media mistakenly refers to as bankruptcy, but we won't dwell on that. But effectively, it means that we've been subject to an almighty spending freeze in the recent couple of years. with very strict spending controls on any money going out. And as we know, parks and open spaces aren't a statutory duty, so fighting for continued investment in nature hasn't been easy at all. I think all of that paints quite a sad picture, but the other side of the coin is that Nottingham is an extremely innovative, creative, artistic, and quite a magical place, I think, where despite all of our challenges, amazing things continually happen. So within our tight city boundary, we also have the oldest and largest set of allotments in the UK. We have a Tudor mansion complete with a deer park, a castle, a national ice stadium, and beneath our feet there lie, would you believe it, about 1,000 caves. And we operate the only workplace parking levy in the Northern Hemisphere, which has allowed us to fund the development of a whole tram network. And we have the most ambitious carbon neutrality target in the whole country. And of the core cities, we score the highest for biodiversity and transport, according to our climate action scorecard. And we have a truly thriving cultural scene, which you can't really imagine until you come and experience it yourself. So please come and visit. And just a little bonus, we actually have the UK's only climate action cinema, which I visited the other day, which is in my ward. Very cool. And I could go on and on. But all of this to say there is a lot of hardship here, but there's so much sort of beauty and hope as well. And I think it's actually those two ingredients, so challenge on the one hand, but also resilience and creativity on the other, that I think is allowing us to do incredible things in this space, in this green space. So before I move on to sort of what we've done, sort of our achievements in investing in green space, I want to touch on that why, which I think is so important. So why, when there are so many crises to fix in the city, do we insist on protecting and bettering our green spaces? So like you in the audience, again, I'm making assumptions, a lot of people here in Nottingham recognise the ecological emergency and so understand the critical importance of safeguarding biodiversity. But I think what often isn't talked about enough is that improving air quality, reducing runoff and therefore flooding, and minimising the impacts of heat waves, all of which more high quality green space does, disproportionately benefits low-income households. So we have some fascinating local studies on the impacts of the 2022 heat wave in Nottingham. I don't know if you remember, 40 degrees across England, which was pretty terrifying. But one of the big things that struck me from that report, which focused on the impact on Nottingham residents, was the economic impact on people on zero-hour contracts, because they couldn't get to work and therefore they just lost out on pay when it was hot. And I could talk a lot more about that, but essentially my point is that air pollution, flooding, heat waves, mental and physical health problems, which can be solved or can be mitigated by access to nature, hit disadvantaged communities the hardest. And I think that alone should be enough to justify investing in public green spaces, even though we don't have a legal obligation to do so. But then as a politician, I'm increasingly able to articulate also a very strong economic case to accompany that. So not just things like reducing flooding, or sort of like the sort of preventative measures which save us money in the longer term, but actually in the immediate term, paving is more expensive to maintain than depaved planted areas. It sort of blew my mind. So that's very helpful in making the sort of greater green case. So, okay, I'm sort of cantering through my slot. But before I run out of time, what then are we actually doing in Nottingham? So I should really start by mentioning our greener, healthier, happier strategy, which sort of unites and strengthens all of the work and projects in the space and sort of gives us something to hang them on. So the strategy takes a landscape scale approach to the benefits that Nottingham's open and green spaces have and delivers for our residents, and also our nature and our wildlife, of course. So we know that parks are a brilliant launchpad for great environmental practices, but those sort of incidental green spaces that deliver wider benefits for residents and nature are being recognised here as equally as important for designing, managing and maintaining. And a great example, and a very recent example here, is the Green Heart in Nottingham. So this is a new green space on the site of a former shopping centre, quite a major shopping centre in Nottingham. So the council had a contract with a company who wanted to build a new mall on that site. But unfortunately, that company went bust around the time of COVID, and we were sort of left with a blank canvas. And of course, because of our financial situation, there was a lot of pressure on us to find a new commercial contract, but we just couldn't ignore this 6,000 strong Facebook group of residents that sprung up, who were demanding what they called a green heart, so a new park in a kind of an old city, which is quite rare. And so we put a consultation in place formally, and then managed to push that through. And again, that wasn't my political leadership, but there was some real bold leadership there that allowed us to get that over the line. And crucially now, it's finally come to fruition, and that scheme and the surrounding area are benefiting a predominantly sort of grey urban landscape that city residents are now enjoying as a daily green oasis to spend time in and walk through whilst engaging with nature and wildlife. So seeing a 438% increase in biodiversity. And just to add, it's very near where I work, actually, the council offices and the train station. If anyone's ever in Nottingham, just go. It's between council offices and our new central library. If anyone wants to take a walk, it's absolutely stunning. And it used to be quite a hotspot for antisocial behaviour. I wouldn't have gone there alone at night, for example. It was a little bit dodgy, but now we were quite worried that, you know, we might see antisocial behaviour and undoing of the planting and things like that, but actually it's just transformed the feeling of the area. It feels so safe and lovely, and it's a really nice like mix of demographics as well. Back to the strategy. So multiple stakeholders have been engaged, representing the diversity of our city residents and sort of a whole council approach. So a really big range of services, so our public health, highways, economic regeneration, active travel, and then sort of lots of external stakeholders as well. Sorry, my throat's drying out. Always happens when I speak. And I think that's the key to a successful strategy, right? It's not groundbreaking, but it's like making sure that all of those key teams are actually buying into it and are engaged and singing from the same hymn sheet. And I think perhaps the most important part of that document, the Greener, Healthier, Happy strategy, is the sort of volunteering strategy contained within it, because it recognises the critical roles that our citizens play in creating and maintaining our natural areas. And in Nottingham, again, referencing back to our financial challenges, but also that community spirit and creativity, the importance of recognising and investing in our volunteers just can't be overstated, because they're the ones that really make things happen. Like, we just wouldn't be able to do it unless we had that sort of person power. They're just awesome. And a great example, or sort of case study, if others are looking for inspiration, is Green Hustle. So this is a group that hosts a festival every year, which sort of, in my view, smashes the stereotype of like white middle-class dominated climate events. It's one of the most diverse festivals that I've ever come across, and now takes place in our market square in the city centre. So you get all sorts of people sort of stumbling across the climate and nature activities and art who wouldn't otherwise engage. But then I think, like, critically, in between those annual festivals, which of course raise their profile to a large extent, Green Hustle operates a huge amount of sort of planting work, and they sort of mobilise this growing army of volunteers, which work very much in harmony with both the council and private sector. So they've got a lot of private sponsorship to improve the spaces that we haven't had the capacity as of yet to transform. So it's a really, really beautiful partnership. And there's so much more I could say, honestly. There's loads and loads going on here, but I've run out of time, I think. So just to reiterate my key points, that not only does Nottingham's high levels of poverty not deter us from investing in nature, but for me, it actually incentivises us to prioritise it, even though we don't have that sort of legal duty to do so. But I think what's absolutely critical is like that just determination, right? Like, where there's a will, there's a way. So a willingness to be bold and think outside the box. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. I'm really excited for this conference, and best of luck to everyone who's on their own green journeys. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. That was brilliant. How inspiring to hear everything that's going on in Nottingham. And now, of course, I want to visit and walk through the Green Heart. Again, lots of conversations beginning to come up, both in the chat and in the Q&A. I'll just say something about that in a moment, around some of the maybe contradictory challenges and intertwining difficulties and barriers that we face an encouragement to focus on some of the co-benefits that start to come through, which I think Sam was articulating really very clearly. We aren't taking Q&A during these keynotes. I should have said that right at the beginning. Please do keep the questions coming, though. They are brilliant material for us to use in the networking, and then later on as we go into the panels. They're very helpful, so do keep them coming. I'm handing over now to James Scott of Urban and Civic, who is also a non-executive director of Natural England. Over to you, James.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's as everybody's been saying, it is great to be here. I'm going to be talking from a UNC Urban and Civic perspective, but having been on the board of Natural England, I've gone and seen a number of the amazing initiatives going on in towns around the country, from Bradford to where they've completely rejuvenated their town centre with green infrastructure running through it, to Mayfield in Manchester, and then hearing Councillor Lux talking about, with such passion, about Nottingham as well, and the role of green infrastructure within cities. It's a privilege to be talking about the perspective of green infrastructure from new places. And that's what Urban Civic has been doing as a business over the last 15 years. We've been delivering new towns up to around 10,000 units in scale. But what the master developer role is to get the land together, get the planning, and then fundamentally build the place with a combination of green, grey and community infrastructure, with the houses then coming forward through a range of different national SME, affordable build-to-rent providers across the site over 10, 15, 20 years, depending upon the scale of the place that's coming forward. And whilst there's a big emphasis on housing numbers, and you see that in all government announcements, actually in the context of that placemaking, the master developer approach has to be able to manage and be expert in the delivery of significant quantums of green infrastructure, cycleways, schools, employment, community facilities, as I say, the elements, the fundamental building blocks of a place. And I'm going to focus today particularly on green infrastructure and use Halton, which is a site on the edge of Rugby, as an example of that. The role of green infrastructure in placemaking. And I'm also going to try and touch on how that affects the building of new communities and the bonds between communities, and then also talk a little bit, and it's difficult to actually put a precise figure on it, about the value in financial terms as well that a place built around green infrastructure can actually bring to a development overall. So Halton is what's in planning speak a sustainable urban extension, but broadly a small new town on the edge of Rugby, 6,200 homes, three local centres and a district centre, 3 primary schools, 1 secondary school, but significant quantums of green infrastructure, both formal and informal. Now, when you're dealing with new places, and this is very current, obviously, in relation to the Planning and Infrastructure Bill and other things going through Parliament at the moment, but this was a slide that I had back in 2014 when we were getting planning consent for Halton, because there was a median population of great crested newts on the site, living in pretty poor habitat, it's fair to say. Now, the big difference when operating at scale is that you can incorporate habitats within a development rather than it being in conflict with habitats. And that's a really important differential when looking at new places at scale. So these newts have been on a journey with us as we've progressed the planning application. And of course, they've gone from being dominating through habitat regulation control, which was what predominated back in 2014, through to nature conservation in the planning policy framework, National Planning Policy Framework, the Environment Act, and of course we now have the mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain for new places and new developments coming forward. But fundamentally, the landscape infrastructure, which the habitats for those newts underpinned as a logic back in 2014, has been delivered at Halton and is now achieving a 28.8% biodiversity net gain projected across the entire site, which is not bad for what was effectively a greenfield site with a lot of radio mass on it historically. And this slide really goes to the point that there's fundamentally a wide range of activity that is undertaken within those green spaces. And I'll build on that a little bit, because actually when you're creating great places and you're looking at how to maximise the biodiversity, but also to create a green infrastructure-led place, you have to take the view that you're creating some spaces that are more separated for nature, but you're also creating pathways and boundaries for nature alongside human activity and human homes. And that balance between the two and that maximising of nature as part of the overall planning process really comes at a fundamental stage, a building block stage to creating great places. So you can do a base model, very simple, very basic, this is what you see a lot of, or you can do a nature-rich model with enhancements. And this is what we've sought to encapsulate and then deliver through and build into the design codes for these places. So nature, the green infrastructure, is the first part of the spatial analysis. Here's an example of that design code for Halton. Here's an example of how it planned out in practice. And you can see as you work through that the role that nature's played, and then also, and this is important because Oliver alluded to partnership, and it is, and it can only be done in partnership. And that's true for existing places, but particularly true for new places. Homes England has been tremendously supportive in terms of the delivery of infrastructure acceleration loans. And those infrastructure loans can now be used for green infrastructure as well as for grey infrastructure. So proud, in fact, that Halton is a poster child within their strategic plan. We've set out to explain as far and wide as we can, and I think the slides will be available later so you can take the QR codes from those in due course. Actually, that journey and what those lessons of moving from newts to net gain have meant for us as well. And working with Natural England and their Green Infrastructure Planning and Design Guide, an absolutely fantastic document with a really very rich website alongside it, you can see Halton included as a case study for how that can be done in practice. But then it gets really interesting, because then you start to really understand how nature is so multifunctional. This is another really, really useful document, the Active Design Principles by Sport England. And it uses Halton as an opportunity to illustrate how all 10 of its active design principles can be incorporated into a large-scale place. And fundamentally, you will see as you flip through this document that those are within landscape settings. So the balance between active design and nature is being embraced by other agencies like Sport England. We're using nature as a means of also underpinning academic research. We're working with Dr. Amy Stringer, as she is now at the University of Coventry, to do an activity-based analysis of play spaces and how does landscape, not just play equipment, but how does landscape actively maximise active behaviours in that context. And it's a fundamental policy as well in relation to being able to spread the educational benefits of understanding what living next to nature actually brings. I alluded to the fact that Halton will have 3 primary schools and 1 secondary school. The school children on that site are therefore cheek and jowl with the nature corridors that are being brought forward alongside them. And we host events, we work with the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust in order to be able to really get that knowledge and desire and enthusiasm and understanding into the younger generations with signposts and events and the like across the site as part of that overall piece. And it's incredibly rewarding to watch young people getting excited about the fact that there is wildflower planting rather than just a mown lawn that they can kick a football around. There's that as well, but there's also that planting. If you look at this is the app that we now have for Halton, but look on the What's On page and you'll see that green infrastructure is also underpinning a wide variety of activities and events on the site. And that's underpinned further by the fact, and this is about community building and growth, the fact that actually the groups that have emerged from a completely new place over effectively a 7-year period, the groups that have emerged, a lot of them are based around the green spaces or the uses of green spaces. Some of those might be obvious, the allotment society, but back and forth is a men's walking group, which actually is to allow men to talk and share problems openly whilst they're out and about walking in nature. So it's a fundamental building block to the community growth, because it's providing not just the seeds for nature, but the seeds for the community. And this is what I meant to talk about very quickly about value. Yes, it is appreciated. This is a little bit like TripAdvisor for home views. Again, Halton featuring very heavily in that report as being a major factor which influences people's love of where they live, and that's the access to green space and areas of wildlife. You go on Instagram, type in Halton Nature, and that will also open up effectively the window to the way in which people are viewing where they live. And finally, very finally, this is some interesting research that you can look at leisure. It's a bit old now, 2019, but it does talk about house price premiums in proximity to different scales of green space. And the curve of this is a lot more gentle than blue spaces, interestingly, where the drop-off is a lot quicker in terms of the house price premium. And also, fundamentally, going to what Councillor Lux was saying, is that where you've got the less expensive homes, the premium on living near green space in terms of the value is also a lot higher than the median priced homes, but it does get higher again towards the end. So be curious, be excited, take every opportunity to maximise the green spaces that you can. The communities, both old and new, in the places that we are creating, will appreciate it.
James, thank you so much. Can I just thank all three speakers? I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired, and that has been, well, certainly whetted my appetite for what I hope are some really creative and thought-provoking conversations that we're all going to have throughout the day. So thank you to Baroness Hayman, thank you to Councillor Sam Lux, and thank you to James Scott for giving three, really different but incredibly invaluable perspectives. It's my job just to pick out a few key themes, and there's so much I could talk about. And I guess my challenge to you is, or my ask of you is, just to pick out your personal kind of key themes. I want to start with what actually Councillor Sam Lux said right at the beginning, if I take you back, and you started talking and you said it's not a luxury. And I think that's a really important principle for us all. Green space, and James, your example you just talked about at Halton brings this to life excellently. But nature in the heart of our towns and cities is essential for healthy communities. It's essential for places for living today and for living tomorrow. And it's essential for places for growth, as Baroness Hayman so eloquently set out. So, I hope you share that thinking, but for me, that's a really important guiding principle that we should never forget. And then there were two other kind of key themes which I'll just touch on. Number one is the importance of big ambition. So Halton wouldn't have worked without thinking creatively at the start of the project and involving all of those organisations that, James, you talked about. And the Nottingham example, I loved the greener, healthier, happier, I hope I've got that right, Councillor Lux, a strategy which binds all this together, and for me shows a real sense of ambition with people at the centre. And I think it was great to hear Baroness Hayman starting to talk about the 15-minute government target around quality green space close to where people live, and the intention to use the Nature Restoration Fund, the river walks, to really put this agenda into practice close to communities. James talked about the 28% biodiversity net gain uplift that can happen when you think differently and start with that big ambition. And again, Councillor Lux, 438% increase in biodiversity. That is remarkable, if you don't mind me saying, in terms of what happens when you create green space. And of course, what you went on to say is it's not just the biodiversity, it's also about the reduction in crime. It's about safe places where people come out, enjoy, be together, and actually celebrate and be part of where they live. Isn't that really inspirational? So, you know, it's about big ambition, it's about scale of opportunity, but then there's the glue for me, which is my kind of final big theme. We heard great examples throughout our 3 talks about innovation, about partnerships, and about bravery. And obviously bravery goes with that big ambition, doesn't it? So I'd love to go to this climate action cinema. So I'd love to hear more about that. That sounds amazing. And I think it's through different thinking, through creative thinking, that we can genuinely make a difference. We heard about how creating green space can actually be cheaper and provide better value in terms of economy than actually creating grey space. So again, it's about joining up agendas and thinking about the multitude of benefits. James used a lovely word around nature. Nature is multifunctional, and you talked about seeds for nature as well as seeds for the community. So again, if we truly put people at the heart, what are many of the spin-off benefits that we can create? And if you start by getting the right people together, you talked about the partnership with Homes England, with Sports England, with universities, what through that sparky collaboration, if we set those frameworks and set those groups with a big ambition, what through partnership and what through collaboration can we achieve to bring that big ambition this government have got through the policy agenda Baroness Hayman set out really into fruition and make a real difference to our places. So they were the kind of 3 key themes that came out for me, but really over to you. So this day is all about being curious. It's about yes and. It's about what more we can do. There's lots of reasons why this is challenging. I think it's fair to say that, and I'm sure in the Q&A we'll get into that. But I think with the 3 speakers this morning, we've shown what can happen through that ambition, through that partnership, through that yes and mentality. So just please, just take a couple of minutes and think about what has landed for you. What does it mean for the way you and your colleagues work in your organisations and beyond? And what are the opportunities you see for the places and communities you serve? It's been a great session. Thank you so much. And I will pass back to Suzy, I believe, at this point. Thanks, Suzy.
Thank you, Oliver. I am going to give you that minute or 2 that Oliver just asked you to take. So I will sit here while we are quietly thinking, and then I'll come back in. I was probably just shy of a minute, but I can't sit in silence. Right, so a few more patterns from me that I'm beginning to hear, building on Oliver's observations there. We obviously are hearing quite a lot, I'm tracking chat and the speakers simultaneously around conflicting priorities. That we will continue to grapple with that as we get into the afternoon. It is not easy. And there is a lot of work to do to work out how to avoid unintended consequences and indeed how to build environments that are genuinely equitable and beneficial to all, including newts and many other species. I started to hear multiple bottom lines begin to come into the conversation. Of course, we have concerns, many of us, about over-financialising nature. There is work happening around multiple capitals. I'm sure many of you know of the Capitals Coalition, which helps with this. Again, I imagine that will come up as we move into the afternoon. And then this thing, collaboration, obviously, we're going to hear lots and lots about as we move through into these panels, which are specifically designed to broach some of that partnership working. I think about what it means to get upstream of a problem. So when James was talking, there was a lot there about diagnosing root causes and getting into the problem before it becomes symptomatic and plays out down the line. What does it mean to get upstream, to have the right people around the table across public, private and third sector to be able to create the kind of environments that we want to be able to live in. Right, I'm going to talk you through what happens next. This is the first of our Connect and Reflect sessions. We have about half an hour once we go out into the tables, so back at 11 in stage view for the panels. The idea of this is to give you the opportunity to start to talk about what you've heard. So one of the questions that you could use to prompt conversation is, did you hear anything in the keynote speeches that inspired you? To talk more generally about what it is that green space particularly means to you in your context, in your work, I guess more broadly in your philosophy. So why does green space matter to you? And then to get towards that action piece, which again we will move into in the afternoon. What changes do you need to see, would you like to see in your place, and how are you going about enacting them? So those are just prompts to help with the conversation. What happens next as we come out of stage view, so I will disappear and the slides will disappear and you'll start to see the tables again. You get to choose where you want to go in the platform. You literally click on a chair. So if you see an open chair, you double click on it and you will go to that table. Introduce yourself. There'll be people from the Nature, Towns and Cities programme around the tables as well to help facilitate and talk with you about wherever the conversation goes. If you're in a table that you're not enjoying, you can click on another chair and go to a different table. You don't have to stay. That is one option for you. Those of you that aren't massively into networking or just need a bit of a break and some quiet time, there will be some resources shared in the chat. You can spend some time, turn your camera and make sure your camera and mic are off. You can spend some time working through some of the resources that the program team will share with you. And of course, if you do need to pop away, I'm seeing a couple of people saying that they have to go and inbox or go to a meeting, whatever it is. Now's a good time to do that. So half an hour if you need to take a break from your computer. I do really encourage you all to stand up and walk around. We forget to do that, don't we? It's a long time spent in front of a screen otherwise. Okay, 10:28. I think that's all I need to share with you at this point. Back here at 11 a.m. and let's head off into the Connect and Reflect session. Thank you all.